back in Washington or what?
Yep. No, I'm in Delaware this morning. I've been making phone calls, both congratulations and condolences to those who won and those who weren't successful. My colleagues in the Senate, friends who ran for governor, and up and down the state, folks who ran for state reps, state senates, levy court, county council, and some of the statewide offices.
Senator Coons, you don't need me to tell you, but it was a very good blue wave for your party in Delaware, except for Sussex, which is stubbornly Republican red, and certainly Democrats picking up House seats and solidifying their position in some of these metropolitan areas. But all the progressive hopes and expectations in the South came up short again. Again, more evidence of the country polarizing both directions?
I think that's right. I've known Stacey Abrams in Georgia since she was in college. We met through a youth leadership program. She has always inspired me as somebody who is very smart and very capable, and it's been hard to watch what is likely. It is a very close race now. It has not been declared, but it looks like it's likely that we will not win the governorship in Florida and the governorship in Georgia. There were a number of Midwestern governorships, in Wisconsin and Michigan. I think in Kansas as well that we did pick up, and then other really significant ones like Ohio where we didn't as a party. I agree with you that one of the challenges we face, Alan, is with a newly emboldened House majority, with some really compelling progressive candidates in Texas and Georgia and Florida who were not successful. What I think the Democratic Party nationally needs to hear is that folks want us to come back to Congress with a focused agenda of things that will make a difference, things that will improve people's lives, put it on the table, and challenge President Trump to work with us or not. The infrastructure package that really didn't get done in the last Congress, an improvement in minimum wage, a way to address access to health care that stops the endless back and forth fighting over the Affordable Care Act, a way to deal with the cost of health care. There are things that Democrats and Republicans should be able to work on and agree on. There will, of course, be some bold steps to hold President Trump accountable, but we need to deal with the issues that affect families and their day-to-day lives first, and then press forward on accountability second.
So I infer from your answer you would rather see tweaking affordable health care to make it better rather than from day one impeachment, investigation, all that, unless the president, for example, tries to throw out Robert Mueller, in which case I guess the House Dems could hire him as their investigator.
That's right. If the president takes a sudden, bold action to try and shut down the Mueller investigation, to circumvent it, to block it, I would expect that the House Judiciary Committee, under new leadership, would take strong counteraction to preserve his work and to make sure that it gets to its conclusion. But I think anyone who thinks that the message of this midterm election was that we should be, as a Democratic Party, leading impeachment efforts against the president, they misread what is a divided response. What I heard from Delawareans is they want us to present real solutions to people's problems. I hear about the opioid crisis. I hear about the cost of co-pays and difficulty accessing medicine, concerns about education, public safety. If we want folks to trust us in the future with governing, we have to show that we can put concrete proposals forward that will address issues.
You look at Delaware now has gone all D, all blue statewide offices. First time I believe that's happened since maybe 1970, if not before. Florida, all red. Every single Florida statewide office is Republican now. It just seems like a collision.
That is our problem, is that nationally we are more divided along sort of sharp lines than we've been in my lifetime. And in my caucus in the Senate, as I return next week, I'm going to lose a couple of very close friends. Joe Donnelly of Indiana, I was just on the phone with him, lost his reelection. Claire McCaskill lost. Heidi Heitkamp lost. These were red state Democrats who were willing to work across the aisle. And some of my best Republican partners, Bob Corker of Tennessee, Jeff Flake of Arizona, they're retiring. So we will face a more divided Senate. It's going to take more effort for Senator Carper who's a real leader in this area, and for me to find and build bridges where we can get things done. That gets harder the more that we are divided into all blue states or all red states.
From a partisan point of view, though, it's got to be chilling, bone-chilling for Democrats to see Florida go the way that it did. There was so much hope, as you know, with both the Senate and gubernatorial races.
That's right. I went into last night really optimistic that both the Ohio and Florida governor's races were going to go our way. Sherrod Brown, my friend, a colleague in the Senate in Ohio, was reelected, one of the hardest fought reelection fights in the Senate. Bob Casey was reelected. Obviously, Tom Carper was reelected. So there are some great senators who won reelection last night in my caucus. But Florida and Ohio are absolutely key to the 2020 map. And it's not at all clear that we had the candidates or the messages that were ultimately successful. And I think there's going to be a lot of reexamining in my caucus. Certainly I'll be pushing for it about what are we doing? How are we connecting with people? How are we actually solving their real daily problems? Because I don't think folks want 2 more years of gridlock and fighting.
I mean, I can imagine just an incredible debate within the Democratic Party, the non-progressives, or, the traditional liberals versus the more progressives or progressive socialists, and looking at, the progressive candidates did well up northeast. It didn't help in the South, and yet some of the moderates who were your colleagues got ousted. So you could look at it either way, and neither formula seemed to work.
That's right. It's a complex pattern, Alan, and I think the biggest question we're all going to be asking ourselves is how do we respond to a president who has successfully moved through a lot of his agenda on the courts, on deregulation, on taxes, on international affairs, but who many of us find very difficult to work with, and whose rhetoric and whose initiatives in some areas, immigration most recently, really are antithetical to our values. How do we find a way to work with him? And now that he faces a House solidly in Democratic control, how will he respond?
Yeah.
Will he be offering ways to work together? And if we can find those ways to work together, I think that offers us some chance at reducing the rhetoric and the division. If not, I think we're headed for 2 more years of folks retreating into their corners. And Alan, I want to say one positive thing about yesterday's election here in Delaware. As I stood at the polls for 12 hours in all 3 counties, I was really struck at how many times I was standing at a polling place with candidates who were opposing each other, running for state rep, running for state senate, running for a levy court post. And they were polite and positive. The folks who were supporting them were chatting. They were interacting with each other in a really remarkably positive way. I've been to several other states during this election season. That's not typical across the country. We need to keep working to preserve the way that we respect each other. Even though we disagree, we had some very hard-fought, very difficult races here in Delaware this time. But the general tenor of being able to work together after return day is something the rest of the country needs to learn from Delaware.
Well, that's the positive side of the Delaware way that still seems to be retained despite the mudslinging in Brandywine 100, as you know, in a few of those legislative races. I have a final question. Let me bring up your bailiwick, one of your bailiwicks, Sub-Saharan Africa. It was said that Nigerian troops firing on protesters or civilians, I didn't see the whole story, that they had gotten some solace from seeing President Trump at one point saying, as you know, that the U.S. military might fire bullets at the refugee caravan if they started throwing stones or rocks.
I saw a similar story, and look, Alan, broadly speaking, it's just a reminder that when we have political debates, the rest of the world pays attention. And so if we want to be a country that is known for respecting journalists, respecting human rights, not misusing force and troops against protesters, the example you just raised, we need to stick to our traditional values. The Khashoggi matter is something that's dropped from the headlines in recent days, but it's going to be brought right back up next week. We face a tough choice on foreign relations about how we will hold the president and the administration accountable for, making changes in our relationship with the Saudis to reflect the near certainty that they planned and carried out. a kidnapped